Hey, how's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's staying safe during this whole crazy pandemic. Today, I will be reviewing all of the wild card games for Saturday and Sunday, and what a wild weekend it was. 3 games each, obviously, due to the new format of the playoff formation, with the seventh seed making it into the playoffs. So, as I mentioned in my previous videos, if you finished at the number 2 seed, unfortunately, you did not have the bye week, as if you were the number 1 seed. So Green Bay and Kansas City got to rest, but unfortunately everybody else had to fight hard in order to make it to the divisional round. The first matchup I want to start with is up in that top left corner here, or top right corner, depending on which way you're looking at it, between the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. I did jot down some notes, so if I happen to look back and forth, that's what I'm doing. Where did I put that? Just been a little bit more organized. Final score on this one was 27-24 for the Bills. This was their first playoff win since 1995. About 15 or 16 years in the making. Hard to believe it's been that long for the Buffalo Bills. And for the Colts, the last time they made the playoffs and won a game was in the 2018/19 season, when they beat the Houston Texans in the first round of the wild card matchup. And they had Andrew Luck. Remember that guy? Yeah, he's been retired for a couple years. Hard to believe. Philip Rivers had a below 500 record coming into this game, so unfortunately that's where he will stand. He is now 5-7 in the postseason, and the big question for him is, will this be his last game? He is getting up there in age, and unfortunately he has not made a Super Bowl appearance, let alone win. So the question is, will he come back with Indy for another year? Will he test the free agent waters and go elsewhere, or will he hit the big old R button and retire? Only time will tell for Father Rivers. Next game on the Saturday afternoon was the Seattle Seahawks versus the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams came out victorious in this one with a final score of 30-20. They are now 2-0 against their NFC West foe with the Seahawks. I should mention prior to this, I did pick the Bills to win, so so far I'm 1 for 1. We'll see what I do with the rest of the picks. The Rams beat out the Seahawks 30-20. They're off to the divisional round. Russell Wilson is now 9-7 in the postseason. He does still have a above average record in the postseason, but unfortunately he hasn't made it to the Super Bowl since the infamous Malcolm Butler interception that screwed them out of a second consecutive win in Super Bowl 49. Jared Goff is getting back in the winning section for a guy that was questionable to start because he had that broken thumb that he suffered, I do believe, in week 16 or week 17, whatever the case may be. Had a pretty decent game. Wasn't anything to stand out about, but obviously they did get the win. And that defense just goes to show that defense can win championships. And I doubted them because I thought, well, they haven't really been consistent because they've lost games they should have won. I did pick the Seahawks in this one, so unfortunately I am 1 for 1 in the pick so far. And the final game of the Saturday evening had the Washington football team, who just barely squeezed into the postseason, but they did squeeze in, taking on Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers. Both these teams, this was their second meeting in the postseason. The Washington got the first back in 2005, I do believe, and now 15 years later, Tampa Bay got their revenge, and they're off to the divisional round. I did make the mistake. I thought Malik Smith was the starting quarterback for Washington. I'm not sure if it was a weekend decision or a Friday decision, because I did make my prediction on Wednesday, but they ended up going with a guy named Taylor Heineke. If you haven't heard of him, don't worry about it. He was their third string quarterback. He got called up, and he played a pretty decent game. He threw for 300 yards. He did have a touchdown and a pick, so it kind of evened out with the TD and the interception ratio. I do believe he's going to have a pretty decent future in the NFL. Granted, he wasn't supposed to be here, I'm sure, because there was stories that he was studying for a finals exam or whatever the case may be, and the degree that he was going for in school. But I got a funny feeling he might put that degree off to the side and focus more on football, because he played very good for a guy that just got called up for his very first game, let alone a postseason game. And then on the other side, can't really argue with the GOAT, Tom Brady. Yes, it does pain me to say that, being a Broncos fan after facing him so many years, but he was with the Patriots. But He got his 31st playoff win. Unbelievable. He's been in the league now for almost 20 years. Hard to believe it's been that long since he's been playing football. So he has a 31-11 record, and as I mentioned previously, they will be advancing to the divisional round. And in this one, I did pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I'm back on the win-lose column with a 2-to-1 ratio. Sorry, I gotta move my head back down. There we go. In the Sunday early game, featured the Tennessee Titans hosting the Baltimore Ravens. This was their 5th playoff matchup in the history of these two teams facing off against each other. And I did pick the Titans to win because I figured that Derrick Henry would have a monster game, but unfortunately he only ended up with, 18 carries for 40 yards. So that's totally unlike him. Just goes to show that, again, the defense can help you win. Obviously, if your offense scores more points, your defense prevents them, you're in a good position. So yeah, only 18 carries and 40 yards. So the defense for the Ravens really shut them down. Final score in this one was 20-13. So it was a defensive battle for sure. And as I'd mentioned, since the Ravens were the away team here, every single time these two teams have played, the away team has won. And I thought that maybe Tennessee could finally break that, but unfortunately they just fell short. It just crumbled under pressure. And speaking of running wild, Lamar Jackson, a guy that people were questioning whether his, during the season when they were having those losing streaks and they weren't consistent, everyone was thinking, well, Baltimore might miss the playoffs, and he just went hot. And it's not just his arm that's been amazing, it's his legs. I do believe he ran for, or does it show here, for 136 yards, and he scored a rushing touchdown along with a passing touchdown. So he played absolutely phenomenal for the Ravens. If you're the Ravens, you got to think we're just lucky to have this guy because he's now obviously going to be the future of this franchise for many years to come. And unfortunately for Ryan Tannehill, he had that amazing run last year with his first playoff appearance with the Titans when they advanced all the way to the AFC Championship, but unfortunately they fell short in the wildcard weekend. Maybe next year will be a better sign. This is a very strong team, so Tennessee Titans, if you happen to stumble upon this video, or if any fans happen to stumble upon this, keep your head high because next season, stay strong. Only good things can happen. In the second game of, if I can get over to the other side, we have the Chicago Bears taking on the New Orleans Saints. Now, this wasn't a game that was, oh my gosh, a must-see. It was a not a very high-scoring game. 21-9 was the final for the Saints. Ironically, this was their first postseason win against the Bears, as I mentioned previously, before they were 0-2 coming into this game. And I had a funny feeling that Breeze wasn't going to go away quietly. I didn't think he'd go 4 straight years in the postseason, or 3 straight years in the postseason, and not get that far. So I feel that this is kind of like a revenge thing. Like he's like, okay, the last 2 years we kind of got screwed, or we screwed ourselves. So now we'll put all our chips in, go all in, and hopefully make a Super Bowl run. So Breeze is now 9-8 in the postseason. I should have mentioned before that with Lamar Jackson that he had his first postseason win. So congratulations for that. Speaking of Breeze, he now has a 9-8 postseason record. Finally got above 500, and I made the mistake in thinking that Nick Foles would be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears. So I thought that because I wrote him in as a possible X factor for them to pull off an upset against the Saints, but it was Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky got the start. He played an okay game, decent game, but now he's 0-2 as a starter. If he had some help running the ball, maybe they would have had a better chance at potentially upsetting the Saints. But unfortunately, Ty Montgomery was only held to 31 yards on, I think, 12 carries. So not a very good day for the running game if you're a Bears fan. So I apologize, Bears fans, you're heading home. And as for the Saints, you're moving on to the divisional round. And we'll see what happens from there. And in this one, I picked the Saints. There's now 3-2. And then the final game is probably going to be the most talked about game for every sports analyst, was the Cleveland Browns taking on the AFC North foe, rival, whatever you want to call it, Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're a Steelers fan, you must be just shaking your head. The final score in this game was 48-37. The score makes it seem like it's closer than it really was, but this was a blowout from the get-go. I'm not sure if anyone can recall, but back in Super Bowl 48, when the Denver Broncos were taking on the Seattle Seahawks, the very first snap of the game had Manny Ramirez hike the ball over Peyton Manning's head, and it went into the end zone. Now, granted, that time it was just a safety, so Denver got to punt it away and then defend the field again. But unfortunately, when the center spiked it over or hiked it over Roethlisberger's head, it went into the end zone. I'm not sure if a Steelers player touched it, but Cleveland did recover it, and they got a touchdown. They were up 28-0 in the first quarter, so basically it was game over at that point. Terrible game for the Steelers. You almost wonder if Ben had played in Week 17, maybe things would be better. He would have had he would have had his legs going. He's basically was off for almost 2 weeks, so just goes to show that a little bit of rust can really hurt you. And I will give a congratulations to the Cleveland Browns. This is their first win in 16 or 17 years. The last postseason win came in 1994, so congratulations on that. Long time coming. I'm sure if you're a Browns fan, you're probably taking that monkey off your shoulder like, oh my gosh, we finally did it after so many years. We finally got through there, so good on them. And I'll just go over these last little bit, a couple of stats. Big Ben finished with 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Obviously, it's a very, very terrible game for a veteran quarterback of his nature. And Mayfield, he's perfect. 1-0 in the postseason. First appearance, first win. So the Browns will be moving on to the divisional round. So it kind of makes it interesting to see how the divisional matchups are going to go. I do believe it's going to be the Saints and the Bucks in an NFC South battle to advance to the championship game, and the Green Bay Packers will be taking on the crazy defense of the Los Angeles Rams. That could be a very dangerous matchup for the Packers. I'm sure they would have rather have taken on the Bears if they could have upset the Saints, but unfortunately this is the hand they're dealt. And as for the AFC side, you will now have the Browns going into Kansas City, the best team in football. That's going to be a real tough matchup. But I mean, if the Browns can pull off an upset against the Steelers, they might make it close against the Chiefs. And the other matchup is going to have the Buffalo Bills taking on Lamar Jackson, who's basically Superman, and the Baltimore Ravens. So that'll be a very interesting matchup. It's going to be a run-heavy game, I do believe, for both sides. And only time will tell to see how those teams unfold and who advances to the championship game. That is it for now. That is my review for the Wild Card Weekend, and a super Wild Card Weekend it was. Hope everyone stays safe, and as always, take care.